Okay, today's podcast is about planning. I'm going to do a series of episodes on planning and academic writing, um, primarily because this is, I think, an oft maligned and very misunderstood topic. And of course, some people have such a revulsion to the idea that we should be doing any planning at all. I feel the need to defend why planning is important and crucial for academic writing. But today I want to start gently. And I just want to talk about more generally why planning is something that we need to get used to doing if we want to write a lot more than we are currently writing. So let me couch it in those terms. I want to start today by thinking about what planning is for. So, what is planning? This might feel like an obvious question, but actually, this is one of those things I feel is very misunderstood in productivity. I'm using the words in air quote, productivity literature. What is planning for? I want you to think about the fact that there are different types of planning that need to be done if you want to make the most of your academic career. So let's talk about, first of all, these different types of planning and then what each of these are for, right? So today, let's think about planning as the thing that will drive your career and output forward or indeed cause it to stall when it's done incorrectly. The first type of planning I want to talk about is strategic planning. So I want to start very big. And this is really about planning as a defense to being a reactive academic. It is a consistent trait in people who come to me with writing problems that they are incredibly reactive in their job. What I mean by this is they are not in control, conscious or otherwise, about what they do with their time. So something lands on their desk, they react. An email comes in, they react. An opportunity, real or imagined, comes to them, they say yes because it's landed at their feet. There is no big picture thinking. There is no planning about what they want to do with their academic career and their writing. It's just like roll with the punches, whatever comes my way, I'll just jump onto that. No plan. That's career disaster. And particularly if you are an early career scholar, this is something that can really destroy your attempts to get tenure and leave you feeling very bewildered at a certain point in your career that you don't know is going to come because it's going to come in the future, but it all starts here. If you have done this as an early career scholar, managed to get tenure, you'll suddenly find yourself bored and unmotivated. And that is because what was really driving your activity, your reactivity, was fear of not getting tenure, fear of not getting a permanent contract. And once that fear is taken away and you have no longer anything to drive you forward, you're just like, whatever, I don't know what to do now. And you're waiting for the next opportunity to land that you can react to because that's what you've always done. If you are a strategic planner, this doesn't happen to you. So strategic planning is about that big picture. What do I want to write about? How do I want to consciously construct my career? What do I want to achieve in the next 12 months, the next 18 months, 2 years, 5 years, darling plan? I love them. What do I want to do? And having that in place and breaking that down and committing and understanding, this is when you're in a rational, non-harassed moment, So you're calm, you're thinking clearly, and you construct the kinds of projects you want to do, the kinds of things you want to work on, and then you put them into a timeline with milestones. You stop being a reactive academic. You are able to say when an opportunity comes, is this greater than what I already had planned for myself? Is this taking me away from my vision of what my career is supposed to be? Or is it actually moving me forward at a faster rate than I was going to do on my own? So having a strategic plan, people think of as something that binds them. They can never say no to unexpected opportunities. That's not true. If that unexpected opportunity is going to move you faster and further toward your career goals, take it. Rewrite the plan to include this thing. You have to drop one of the other things, so that's okay, right? Because you're still on track to go where you had already planned to go. I mean, the vehicle you're traveling in might be different, but you're still going where you want to go. That is very different from having an idea that you want to do this, that, and the other, and you want to go there, and then a bus drives over you because you've said yes to something that's completely unrelated because it was presented to you and it seemed like an easier option in the moment, even though it's not going to take you anywhere near the destination that you want to go, right? So the strategic plan is really, really important so that you can consciously reflect on where you want to go and how long you want to take to get there. So that when other things come to you, you stop being reactive, you stop reacting, and you can consciously decide, is this taking me where I want to go faster, better, or is this going in the opposite direction? These are not opportunities. They feel like opportunities, but they're not. And people who don't do strategic planning do that all the time. And then when they have to construct a career narrative in a promotion application, they find it impossible to do because their work is all over the place. Oh, I'm a bit over here, I'm a bit over there, a bit over here, because they've just reacted to whatever came across their path. In other words, there was no strategic plan. But what that says to a promotion committee is that person has no expertise in any one place. They just do loads of random things. That is not the way to establish a world leading expert and therefore get promoted. So there's a whole bunch of reasons why strategic planning is critical. And most academics don't do it. They live day to day, like, battling the fire in front of them. So strategic planning is critical. The second type of planning is time to task planning. So this is about day to day, week to week. How am I spending my time? And how am I creating time in my diary to move my projects, my research, my writing forward? That is, in other words, working with a calendar, blocking out time and saying, I don't care what happens, in this 2 hours, I'm doing my writing. That's it. Immovable. And then when you turn up for those 2 hours, knowing exactly what tasks you are going to perform. There's no point in blocking out writing time if you turn up and you're like, what to do today? Because half of the time is gone thinking about what to do instead of just turning up and doing some things. Again, time to task planning makes you an action taker. You've made the decision, you've blocked out the time, and you have already decided what you're going to do in that time slot, and then you just turn up and do it. And at the end of that time slot, you have tangible progress. I have a lot of clients who block out time in their diary, but don't do the task part, and then get increasingly frustrated that their work isn't moving forward and blame planning and say, well, planning doesn't work. I'm doing the planning and nothing is happening because you're not doing the work. You're not doing the task selection prior to the writing slot and you're just turning up and hoping the inspiration will hit, it's not a million miles away from the academic who doesn't plan at all, right? Or who just waits for inspiration, one of Sylvia's specious barriers to writing. So time to task planning, critical. So we have strategic planning, time to task planning. We have goal orientation. So what I mean by this is, what are your medium, short, and long-term goals? And how is what you're doing on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis meeting those goals? So if you like, planning with milestones. How do you know you're going where you need to go? How do you know when you get there if you haven't left a milestone in place, right? So how can you tell whether this is working or it's not working? If you're trying out new techniques of writing, how do you know when you can say, well, that was a success, right? If you haven't got goal planning in place, you can't know that. You can't know when you've arrived if you have no destination to go to. So it's very important to have goal orientation planning in place. And then the last part of planning, which is not planning per se, but is part of the planning process, and that is auditing. So the fourth type of planning is auditing. Auditing your progress and auditing your technique. So instead of the planning where we look forward, this is the planning where we look back. So we get to the end of the week, we get to the end of the month, we get to the end of the semester, and we look back and we say, okay, this worked, this didn't. How can I get better at this? Yeah, let's not do that again, because that was a disaster. If we don't take stock and do some auditing of how we've spent our time and what returns we got in that time, we can't adjust. If we can't adjust behavior based on facts, we're just spinning our wheels and repeating the same failures over and over again. Of all of the types of planning that I talk about with academics, this is the one that the really successful writers do and the least successful writers don't do. I don't know what it is about academics. They don't like looking backwards. It's always the next thing and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So any kind of forward planning, okay, some people just hate planning, but you can kind of get them on board with. But any kind of backward assessment of what they've done and how it went, they're not into it. But it makes such a difference. Again, this is a massive needle mover in terms of productivity, because you're learning. You're learning about yourself. Okay, I said I was going to do that. I didn't. Why didn't I? What was putting me off? Was it because I wasn't prepared? Was it because I didn't have a list of tasks? Was it because I opened my email when I told Melanie I was never going to open my email? What was it that intervened between you and the plan? And then let's readjust so that we don't keep engaging over and over again in the same behaviors that derail you, right? That is why the audit and the looking back, how did this week go? It takes 5 minutes. This is not an in-depth existential examination of your soul. This is a 5-minute practice. Oh God, one day I said I was going to do this, I didn't do it. Why didn't I? Usually I can already tell my clients the answer. What you said you were going to do was too big, didn't fit in the time slot. You hadn't defined it clearly. You hadn't broken it down. There were too many tasks. The tasks were too vague. The tasks were too hard. You opened your email. You met with that person. Like, the list of classic triggers for why they didn't do it, I've got them all. But it's what's important for the client is that they start to recognize them themselves outside of the coaching conversations, that they can do this audit and then meaningfully adjust what they're doing to respond to that. Because without that kind of backward planning, we don't make progress. So this was the first little bit of talk that I wanted to do on planning, because planning gets such a bad name in productivity and productivity literature. And it is much maligned with my own clients. So I wanted to set out these 4 types of planning, and then we're going to have a few more episodes that really get into, the nuts and bolts of how we do that planning in order to make meaningful progress in our careers and in our writing.